The air in the Grand Confluence was thick with perfumes that smelled of ozone and distant, sugary rain. Luminescent spores drifted from the vaulted ceiling, catching on the intricate silks and polished chitin of 1,000 assembled dignitaries. Among them, he stood out, a lone human in a simple, dark suit, feeling like a smudge of charcoal on a canvas of vibrant jewels. He was a guest, an afterthought, a gesture of diplomatic inclusivity from the celestial Anthiv. His name was Leo, and he was profoundly bored. From his balcony perch, Leo watched the pageantry unfold. The queen, a being of serene, graceful limbs and eyes that held the depth of nebulae, presided from her living throne of woven crystal. Her voice, when she spoke, was a harmonic resonance that vibrated in the bones, translating perfectly through the implant behind his ear. She spoke of unity, of the enduring peace of the Anthiv, of the grateful assimilation of countless client species into a glorious, purposeful whole. Leo sipped a too-sweet nectar, his mind drifting back to the briefing. He was a cultural liaison, a low-level functionary. His only job was to be seen, to smile, to show the human face was among the stars. The real diplomats were elsewhere, arguing over trade lanes. This was just ceremony. The grand procession began. Representatives from integrated species approached the throne to renew their oaths of fealty. The Sheldra in their mineral crusts, the floating Ghast with their whisper songs, the sturdy, moss-covered Thren, each performed their ritual. Each was blessed by the queen's touch, a slender hand upon their brow or carapace. It was beautiful, seamless, and to Leo, utterly predictable. Then the music changed. The harmonic resonance dipped, acquiring a subtle, dissonant undertone. The next species to approach was the Kithral. Leo remembered them from the dossiers, a recently integrated avian-reptilian race, proud and artistic. But the three beings that shuffled forward were not proud. Their brilliant plumage was dull, their movements stiff, synchronized not by choice, but by an invisible compulsion. As the queen extended her hand, the lead Kithral did not bow with grace. It trembled, a full-body shudder that was starkly visible. A low, desperate keen escaped its beak, a sound the translators did not bother to interpret. The hand touched its feathered crest. The trembling stopped. Instantly, the Kithral's body went perfectly still, then relaxed into the same placid, empty calm as all the others. It stepped back in line, its eyes blank. A cold knot tightened in Leo's stomach. His boredom evaporated. That was not gratitude. That was not peaceful assimilation. That was the cessation of a struggle. He looked around the chamber. The assembled delegates swayed gently, emanations of contentment washing from them in soft psychic waves. He felt nothing, a human immune to such empathic broadcasts. He had always considered it a social handicap. Now, he saw it as the only reason he could see the crack in the performance. His mind raced, recontextualizing everything. The perfumes in the air, not just for ambience, but carrying subtle pheromonal pacifiers. The harmonic speech of the queen, not just beautiful, but a carrier wave for compliance. The touch, the final sealing touch. The grand confluence was not a celebration. It was an annexation, a quiet, beautiful, and utterly final conquest. He was not a guest. He was a witness to a galactic-scale predation, and he was next on the list. Panic, cold and sharp, lanced through him. He had to leave. Now, he set his glass down on a floating tray, his movements deliberately slow. He offered a slight bow to no one in particular, and turned toward the arched exit behind his balcony. A symphonate, a tall, willowy attendant whose role was to guide guests, glided into his path. Its face was a mask of porcelain beauty. "You are leaving before the final communion," the human delegate. "The Queen's blessing is for all present." The voice was melodic, but the words were not a question. They were a command. A slight headache he managed to project, his diplomatic training clinging on. The scents are potent. I require air. I will return. The symphonate did not move. The blessing is imminent. It is a great honor. To refuse is to reject the unity of the anthiv. The subtext was clear. To refuse was to declare oneself an enemy. Leo's eyes darted past the attendant. 2 more symphonates had moved to flank the archway, their expressions placid, their stance unyielding. The psychic pressure in the room seemed to intensify, a blanket of forced serenity meant to smother dissent. He felt a pressure behind his eyes, a foreign, soothing whisper at the edge of his mind. It was gentle, insisting that all was well, that surrender was peace. Humanity had never evolved psychic empathy, but it had evolved something else, a fierce, stubborn, and compartmentalized will. Leo dug into that now. He leaned into the headache, let it become his shield. He grimaced, not entirely faking it. The pressure is affecting my implant, he said, his voice strained. Protocol demands I recalibrate before official functions. The human embassy will be concerned if I become distressed. He invoked bureaucracy, the one universal constant. A flicker of uncertainty passed through the symphonate's large eyes. The Queen's system was perfect, but it was built on order. A diplomatic incident, however minor, was a disorder. Before it could decide, Leo acted. He took a step sideways, not toward the exit, but toward the balcony's edge, overlooking the main floor. He gripped the railing, pretending to steady himself. The movement broke the attendant's immediate focus. Below, the Queen was rising. The final movement of the ceremony had begun. She descended the steps of her throne, a radiant figure moving to walk among her subjects, to touch them, to complete the confluence. She moved with a gentle, inexorable pace. Her path, Leo saw with dawning horror, was a calculated spiral that would eventually wind past every balcony, including his dot time was up. Diplomacy was over. He was a cornered animal in a room full of predators dressed as angels. He looked at the railing, then down at the floor 30 feet below. It was crowded with placid, swaying delegates. An idea, desperate and fundamentally human, formed. It was not elegant. It was not diplomatic. It was a disruption dot as the Queen passed the first cluster of delegates. Bestowing her touch, Leo raised his voice. Not a shout, but a clear, carrying human oration, a line from an old, forgotten play his implant pulled from memory dot, his pump, but the external shell of a hollow truth. He declaimed, his voice cutting through the harmonic drone. Every head in his immediate vicinity turned. The psychic blanket rippled with confusion. The symphonates flinched as if struck by a physical object. The music faltered for a single glorious second. Human speech, raw and unmodulated by harmony, was a jagged stone in their stream of consciousness. He did not wait. He vaulted onto the railing. A gasp, a true, unscripted sound of shock, rippled through the crowd. Suicide was an illogical blip, a senseless waste of biomass. It was not in their scripts. Leo jumped. Not down, but across, to the adjacent balcony. He landed hard, rolling into a group of startled ghast, who floated back with alarmed whisper songs. He was on his feet in an instant, pushing through them toward the interior arch of their box. This one was unguarded. He burst into a mirrored service corridor, his heart hammering against his ribs. Alarms, silent to the ear, but screaming through the psychic network, would be spreading. He ran, his dress shoes slipping on the polished floor. He had no map, no plan beyond the way. He rounded a corner and slammed into a broad, hard chest. It was a Thren, the moss-covered species, standing guard before a simple door marked with utility sigils. The creature grunted, its small eyes widening at the sight of a fleeing human. It raised a massive, stony hand. Leo did not stop. He dropped into a slide, slipping between the friend's legs, a move so undignified, so utterly illogical. The guard was still processing it as Leo scrambled up and yanked open the door. It led not to freedom, but to a maintenance catwalk over the cavernous underbelly of the confluence. Giant organic conduits pulsed with light below. Across the chasm, maybe 60 feet away, was an open ventilation portal, a dark maw leading into the city's infrastructure. There was no bridge. Behind him, he heard the thunderous steps of the Thren, and the lighter, faster steps of symphonists. Their psychic probes brushed against him, seeking purchase, offering promises of painless surrender. 60 feet. An impossible gap. For them, Leo backed to the very edge of the catwalk, his mind cold and clear. He remembered his youth, the gravity fields of the Martian sports domes. He calculated the lower gravity here, his own mass, the needed velocity. It was a mad gamble. He ran. With every ounce of strength, he sprinted toward the edge of the abyss. The symphonates reached for him, their graceful fingers brushing the back of his jacket. He leaped. For a terrifying moment, there was only the hum of the conduits and the rush of air. He flew, limbs pinwheeling, over the glowing void. The far ledge rushed toward him. He was short. He was going to fall. His outstretched hands caught the lower lip of the ventilation portal. His body slammed into the chasm wall with a force that drove the air from his lungs. His fingers, already bloody, screamed in agony. He hung there, dangling over the endless drop. He looked back. Across the gap, the Queen herself stood at the edge of the catwalk, surrounded by her attendants. She was no longer serene. Her nebula eyes were fixed on him, not with anger, but with a profound, unsettling curiosity. Here was a variable. Here was a will that her harmonies could not dissolve, a logic that defied her own.